Good morning. We'll just give folks a couple more minutes to join, and then we'll get started. Good morning. I'm Alicia Johnson-Turner, Deputy Executive Director at the Office of Recovery. We appreciate everyone joining this morning and wanted to give you all a little walkthrough of the portal that the state is setting up for NEUs to request their funds. I know there have been lots of questions about it, and we are still waiting on some additional forms and guidance from the Treasury, but hope to have those soon. So Micah, if we could go to the next slide, please. So we just want to go over a little bit of background information. We'll have my team member Jocelyn will give us a walkthrough of the portal as, Micah, can you hear me? Am I echoing? Okay. Bridget, I'm not sure. It sounds like other folks can hear me. So Jocelyn will complete a walkthrough of the portal, and then we'll have a little time for question and answers, I believe. All right, next slide. So for those of you that have attended our webinars before, you've definitely seen Secretary Burns-Wallace talk about this slide, but the part that we're going to focus on today is really the gray non-dotted arrow that's going from the state of Kansas over to the 614 non-entitlement units. So these would be the cities in Kansas under 50,000. And how we're going to get those funds to you, how that process is going to work, and hope that we are able to answer your questions as we go. Next slide, Micah. Thank you. So I'm sure many of you have seen that we released the final NEU list with the expected amounts on June 9th. And just a reminder that funds through that you'll receive need to be obligated by the end of 2024. And then those funds need to be expended by the end of 2026. You will receive 50% of your funds in the coming days. And then the second tranche in approximately 1 year. On to the next one, Micah, please. So a few things that you can do now until the portal opens, please go as soon as possible and register for a DUNS number. We know that there are cities, counties, and other units of government in other states that are all requesting this right now. So what exactly the timeline is, I think applications are definitely up. So the normal timeline of a few days may be extended. And then we want to make sure that you're gathering this key data that's listed here. You're going to need an authorized representative, a contact person with the relevant information. Those can be the same person, but for sure your authorized representative should be the person that has essentially signing authority for your community. So that might be a city manager. It could be different based on your local unit of government, but whoever has the ability to do financial transactions, that sort of thing. And then the state has financial banking information for all 614 entities currently, but if for some reason you're not going to use the standard bank account that the state would normally deposit money into, you're going to need to let us know what that new banking information would be. And then there are going to be 2 additional pieces that need to be signed. These are on the Treasury website and also, I believe, linked here so that you can have them after. The slideshow will be available after. And so those are the civil rights and then the awards terms and conditions agreement. So starting to look at those now, making sure that you have the authority to apply and know who all of these folks are going to be, and then really starting on that DUNS number as soon as possible if you don't already have one. All right, next slide. And I'm going to let Jocelyn take it away and sort of walk through what you're going to need to do and how this portal is going to work.
Okay. Right screen here shared for you guys. Okay, so this is a demonstration version of the form that you guys will get, and we have a couple other little tweaks that we want to make to the form. I'll make sure you're clear here on what those are. And then really, we also just want to make sure with any questions that come from the webinar today that we can incorporate any clarity that may need to be added. And we should be able to flip those changes around. And as soon as we have this final version, you guys will just receive a link directly. So anyone who is invited to this meeting, who is in our listserv for our NEU folks, will receive this link directly. If you're on this webinar and you did not get a direct invite in your email, that means you are not in our listserv and you will not be the one to get this link. So use the inquiry form on the website if you need to get added. And I would be clear in that when you're updating your contact information in there, in that request, I would be clear that you also want this link if you're concerned that the correct parties are not listed. So you'll see up front a reminder for the same information that Alicia just went over that will be needed. So you'll need to have all that stuff ready to go. I've already been in here, so what you didn't see is the very first thing that DocuSign pulls up is you'll have to click a box that's an agreement to use DocuSign, and that's just a little click box up here by where it says enter text right now. So the first thing you're going to do is enter your authorized contact information. So this is going to be the management or equivalent who is authorized to sign documents on behalf of your city. You're going to need full name, title, email address, and phone number. One of the things we will add in here is an address field for each of these contacts, as we are aware that could be different than your overall city address. So we'll give you that opportunity as well. The primary point of contact, if it's the same person, you don't have to fill anything else out. You can just click that box and those fields will no longer be required. But this is an opportunity, as Alicia said, to have a primary point of contact for invites to the webinars, for communications and reminders of deadlines that you want to make sure is getting all of that information directly in addition to your authorized person. Both of these contacts will get a copy of the signed forms upon signature. And we will also make sure to add an address field there for primary point of contact. When it gets into the next section for your organization's information, we've got 3 different drop-down boxes by alphabet. We've got a lot of entities here to get all the cities involved, and this was the easiest way to do that. Just be careful here, because while it would allow you to select something for each of these boxes, because just the functionality of DocuSign didn't allow us to restrict that, that would obviously create some confusion in your application. So make sure that only one city is selected in the appropriate box. You will want to select your county as well. And for those cities that might be in 2 different counties, this should be your home rule county. Here's an important piece. This is your opportunity if you're interested in opting out of the funds. If you choose to opt out of the funds, this is basically where the application stops. It will revert the funds to the state. And this is where we're still waiting on the form from Treasury to officially opt out. So we don't have the form in here for that. But if you say that you want to opt out, you will still need to acknowledge for our benefit your intention to do that by initialing. And when you select this box, it'll ask you to put in your name and initials. And when you adopt an initial, that will electronically sign. And at that point, then we will have you on a list to send that Treasury form that officially declines the funds when it becomes available. If you do not want to decline your funds, then you'll need to confirm that you are not aware of any suspension or debarment or exclusion that would disqualify for you for these funds. It's going to be very rare that that is the case. And so if you're not aware of those things, then the answer to those is no. If you were aware of an issue there, then, and it looks like we need to update that question number. So, but you would just give us a brief explanation about your understanding of the circumstances. This is where then you'll need to enter an active DUNS number. It'll be a 9-digit number, and these instructions are up front. They're in the FAQ. They're all over the place. But if you do not have one, you can follow this link, or you can give this number a call to begin the registration process. It's typically a couple of days to turn that around. But like Alicia said, there could be a backlog. We understand that. You'll need to at least let us know if you do not have an active one. You'll need to confirm that an application is in process by checking that box. So this is an either or. Either you have an active number or you have an application in process. And if that's the case, you'll fill out everything else. We still want you to process the application and get it through so that we can go ahead and review all the other information and validate your application. And then we will follow up directly for those of you who have a DUNS number in process, and via email, we will communicate and we'll collect that information as soon as you have it, and that will allow us to process your payment. This is where you'll enter your tax identification number or your employer identification number. And if you are aware of your state of Kansas supplier ID, you can put it in here. That may speed things up for us in just getting your payment set up and getting your application validated. But with your EIN or your TIN number, we can get there as well. So if you don't know that, that's fine. This is where you will enter your organization address. This is going to be the official address that goes along with your registered DUNS number. And so, you know, you may have individual addresses for those contacts, depending on how you're set up, but this will be your official city address. And then from there, once you filled in that key information, it will go ahead and pre-populate the forms that need to be signed. What you'll notice is that, you know, I selected a city and a county up here, but the city in my official organization's address is what is going to flow as the recipient. So that organization address is really critical. We will do a validation on the back end of these applications and make sure that, you know, the address matches those cities that that have been selected, and if there's any issues, we'll follow up with those contacts and get those cleared up and make sure the forms are filled out correctly. But the authorized representative is who will be pulled through onto these forms as the signer. And if you haven't used DocuSign before, it's very user-friendly. You'll just, again, use those buttons. You can type in your name and your initials and kind of select a style, or you can draw it with your mouse if you're interested in doing that. You can also upload an image of a signature if you prefer. And then when you adopt and sign, those forms will be filled out there. These terms of the forms are in the links to this webinar. They're in our FAQs. They're on our website. Please spend time with those and make sure all the right people have had a chance to review those and understand what is being asked and what is being required by certifying and accepting these funds. There's 2 forms, so there's 2 signatures. And when you finish that, it will submit the application. You will get a copy of the PDF version of these forms to both of those contacts. And we'll review all of those. Like I said, we'll follow up if there's any concerns or questions on the data. We will then pull the banking account information that we already have for your city in our system. And if you're interested in these funds going to a different account, then there are some instructions in the communications that we've sent out earlier with an email address to our municipal services team in the Office of Accounts and Reports. You can also get to us through that inquiry form on the website. So if you're unsure of the mechanism to change that banking information, just reach out and tell somebody you're interested in doing so, and we will get to you with the appropriate forms that would need to be signed in order to set up a new bank account. In terms of the timeline then to turn around payments, this process will be new to us, right? There's 614 NEUs that we'll be distributing payments for and reviewing applications for. But I would say it could be up to 2 weeks from when you submit your application until the payment shows up in your bank account. That gives us time to review the application and get all the appropriate payment information set up. And you should get a confirmation when that payment is processed. If you get beyond that 2 weeks and you haven't seen a payment, then please, at that point, feel free to reach out and follow up, and we'll let you know if something is held up or if we've been trying to get a hold of you regarding a concern with your application and we've been unable to reach you, that would be the period of time that would be appropriate. Within those 2 weeks, try to be patient with us. And it could be that payments get made sooner than that, depending on the cycle that we pick up applications for review and when you get into that cycle. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm sure there are plenty of questions now that you've seen the form. And we will finish with a couple more slides, and then we'll take questions.
So great. What do you do now? First and foremost, start reviewing the Treasury guidance. There's a lot of it. The appendix of this slide deck has many of the links. The Treasury frequently asked questions actually were updated twice last week alone. So it's very much a moving target. I would especially encourage you to look at the sections on ongoing reporting requirements. The NEUs will have a report due to Treasury in October. Part of that report will actually be providing copies of the award document and the assurance that Jocelyn just showed you, signed and directly to Treasury. Once ready, submit your portal request. So we, as Jocelyn mentioned, there's a couple more tweaks, but it should be live here shortly. And we would encourage folks to submit as soon as possible so we can get payments out quickly. Managing the funds. So calculate your local government's revenue loss if that's a direction you want to go. When you look at the Treasury guidance, you will see that there are some allowable activities that are opened up to you as a local government if you generate revenue loss and go down that road. The National League of Cities actually has a calculator on their website that will help you through that process. Start doing needs assessments, both internally within your municipality, but also in the local community. And once those needs assessments are completed, crosswalk with the actual programmatic allowability within Treasury guidance. Please note that the more programs you fund, the more subrecipients you have, the more audit compliance and reporting responsibilities you will have as well. So definitely a key consideration as you're working through this process. You will be direct recipients of federal funds from Treasury. So you will need to identify or sometimes establish the organizational structure to administer these funds. Things like internal controls, file retention, and process and policy documentation, including who within your organization is going to ultimately make allowability decisions as you're considering different programmatic options. And then last, continue to engage with the Recovery Office. We very much are going to be a resource for you throughout this process. As was mentioned before, use the inquiry form for questions, being added to the listserv, signing up for the newsletter. Monitor the newsletter and the website for content. We will be providing ongoing webinars and collateral materials and templates to try and make this process as easy as possible for you. And with that, I think we'll take some time to answer some questions.
So one of the questions here from Dee Grunder, an earlier slide indicated funds would be dispersed between 7/1 and 7/31. Does that mean the state has applied for and been granted the additional 30 days to disperse funds? In other words, we're not going to receive the funds before 7/1. So what I can tell you is the Treasury has not even released the application for an extension at this point. We have emailed Treasury and asked for it. They have indicated an initial 30-day extension for any state is not going to be an issue in conversations that we've had with them. So as you all can imagine, it is the 17th of June, and we still don't have the declination form for you all. Guidance is still rolling out. So I think it is safe to say, as Jocelyn said, it's going to be about, up to 2 weeks to get your funds. So it probably is not likely you're going to get funds before 7/1. But we are going to do our best to get those out as quickly as possible. Jocelyn, anything else on that one?
I would just confirm, yeah, in your question, Dee, that time period between 7/1 and 7/31 is under the assumption that we will get that extension. And in our conversations with Treasury, they there should be no concern in us getting an additional 30 days to do that. There is, while we're talking about that, that time period, I will just also address another question that came in about when we can deem entities to be non-responsive, in which case those non-responsive entities, that their allocation amounts will be reallocated amongst the cities who have certified, applied for funds, and who have not yet reached the 75% threshold for their budget. That non-responsive period is slightly different. So the state gets 30 days or 60 days, depending on our extension, from when we receive the money to get those out for those people who have provided all the accurate information and certified using those forms. The time period for non-responsive actually starts when the links go out the door, when this portal is live. And so we will be working off a 60-day deadline for those folks. What that means is, here's what's going to happen. If you have not started an application throughout our entire period, as soon as that application portal is available, you will be getting weekly reminders from us to do so. And if by the time we close the portal the last week of July, you still have not submitted an application, that last week's, really starting with the 26th of July, is when we would consider an entity to be non-responsive, and we would have additional time after the 31st to get a hold of you and get you into the application portal and get those payments made before we have to recalculate and redistribute those funds, into the middle of August. So we'll keep reminding you, but if somehow we haven't gotten a hold of an entity, we'll be following up more rigorously towards the end of July and into August to say, we're getting ready to have to redistribute these funds if we don't get an application. And I say the 26th because of that time period it will take for us to turn funds around. So when we send out the link, you'll get instructions, and that'll say, we're going to pick up any applications through July 26th in order to make our deadline in making payments by July 31st. Beyond the 26th, there will be kind of a separate deadline for those entities that are deemed non-responsive. Hopefully that addresses with more clarity that time period.
So there's another question about when the form will be available to start submitting soon. In the next couple of days, I think is the safe answer. It could be this afternoon, it could be Monday. So we're working as quickly and as hard as we can. And as Jocelyn said, we will be emailing out as soon as it's available to all the contacts that we have in our list. So if you're not in the list, if you did not get an email inviting you to this webinar, you are not in the list, and you should go to our website and submit the form asking to be added to the list. So there are several questions in here about use of funds. So I want to provide a disclaimer. For all of these funds, the state is, while the state is essentially a pass-through entity for Treasury to get you the funds, the state has no role in reporting or compliance of these funds. The Office of Recovery is here to be a resource, And we plan to continue to provide webinars and provide as many answers as we can, but on very specific questions like, can I build X building? It will take this long. It's for this purpose. That's not something that we're going to be able to tell you yes or no to. There's going to be a certain amount of interpreting the guidance, the FAQs that is going to fall on cities. So we realize that. So we will do our best to point you to where in the guidance it should give you that answer, but also knowing it can be ambiguous. We are currently working on standing up a master services agreement for some of these strategic things, as well as auditing and just general compliance and accounting services that cities would be able to use. And so a consultant of that sort, if your city chooses to engage with one of those, might also be available to help you determine if something is eligible or not. We will do our best, but getting a specific yes from us is probably not going to be very likely, just because we don't want to give you bad advice, and we're not going to have all the information likely needed to make that decision for you. And so I see Murray is asking if we go to someone at the federal level. There is an email address that Treasury has provided. I am not sure what the capacity is of that email address to address very specific questions. You know, there are 614 NEUs just in Kansas. So if we think about California, there are going to be a lot more. So I don't know what their capacity is and what their timeline is going to be for turning around those questions. So you may be better using that master services agreement to contract for services. Jocelyn, what have I missed on that?
I think that covers it. There are a lot of resources on our website already, FAQs, both pointing to the federal guidance and some questions that the state has answered through various webinars. The webinars that we've hosted for local governments are out there. There's a lot of content about eligible uses and a lot of questions that have been answered on that front. There will continue to be resources that we will put out to help guide you. So please get familiar with that website and those resources and let us know if you have specific questions, because most likely in those questions, we're going to point you back to those resources that exist at that level that we're comfortable providing guidance.
So there are several questions here about the deadline to submit the application. As Jocelyn said, we're operating under the assumption we're going to get the 30-day extension, which would give you until approximately July 26th to submit the application. Another question here, we were told we're going to need a SAM number. Nothing was mentioned about that. Is it required? Matt, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a SAM number is not required for the application, but will be required for reporting.
Yeah, so this is one of those weird sort of deviation points. So a DUNS number is required for the state of Kansas to distribute the money to you or be in the process of requesting a DUNS number. When you actually start to report directly to Treasury, they will require a SAM.gov registration. SAM is the System for Award Management. The website is literally sam.gov, where you can start that process. You can't start it until after you have your DUNS number. Historically, DUNS numbers take 1 to 2 days to be issued. Right now, they're backed up a little bit. SAM.gov registration takes 2 to 3 weeks. So definitely start that process when you can, because you will need it before you can submit your first report, which will be due in October to Treasury.
So I have another question from Nancy. So the money will be available to our city. All we have to do is complete the application and complete all follow-up reporting. I would say the answer to that is yes, but I would encourage you to begin to look at the reporting requirements. If your city is not familiar with federal reporting, to Matt's earlier statement about how many subrecipients you have makes things very complicated, and just want to make sure that everyone's aware of the reporting requirements that you're getting into. Matt, anything else on that?
I would just add reporting and compliance requirements. So there's something called 2 CFR Part 200, or the Federal Uniform Guidance, that will govern subrecipient relationships, payments, procurement methodologies. So it's really the set of rules you will need to follow as you administer these funds.
Perfect. Jocelyn, I've got one here from Kim. I missed the first couple of minutes and I don't understand how the designation of bank account works.
Sure. We have all of the cities set up in our accounting system based on those bank accounts through Department of Revenue, where tax refund payments are made. And so we will be using the information that we have available already in the system. It's a pretty robust process to set up a new bank account with a lot of, to prevent fraud, we have to have a lot of verification steps. And so if you want to make a change, we will have forms and a process for you to do so. And you'll need to just make that request via the inquiry form or another email address that was provided in the instructions, and will be provided again when we send the link with additional instructions. But unless you really need to make a change, you're going to get the money most expediently if we use the bank account that we already have.
Thank you. So I have a question from Leslie. What can the money be used for, and will the slideshow be available somewhere? Yes. So I don't think that at this point we want to go into the uses of funds, because it's a very long answer. But I would direct you to our website, which is covid.ks.gov, which is where you'll find this slideshow, a video recording of this following when this webinar ends, and additional resources, links to FAQs, the interim final rule, that all talks about what the funds can be used for. Jocelyn,
there was a question about how to get to that list or where to find that inquiry form. If you go to that website for the recovery office, at the very top, there's a contact us button, and that's the inquiry form. That'll get you to us for anything. There's a drop-down menu once you go in there with categories of, do you have questions about compliance? Do you have questions about coordinating with your counties or with the state? All kinds of categories. There is a category in there called contact information updates. So that would be the category you would want to select to request access to be in the listserv. That link to that form is also noted in all of the invites that have gone out for the webinars and any of the communications that you've received directly. So if somebody in associated with your city has received all of those communications, we have all mailers. For a handful where we didn't have email addresses, we did send mailers with all the same information. So check around if you really think you haven't received any communications, but that would be the quickest way, is to get on that website, fill out that inquiry form, and we will get you added.
Perfect. Jocelyn, I've got another one for you. Will we get any advance notice of when funds will hit, so we can make sure our depository bank has sufficient funds to cover the deposit?
In terms of that notice, it's not going to be a lot of, by the time your payment is approved for payment and in process, we will, you're not going to be able to give them a lot of notice before it hits. So what I would say is, as soon as you fill out your application, you should give your banking entity that heads up if needed, and the allocation amount, because that's posted on the website. along with the listing of NEUs. So you can give them a heads up basically as soon as you submit the application. If there's any holdup to that, you will get notified, I would say within a 1-week period, if there were any issues with your application that would delay that 2-week maximum time period.
Perfect. John has 2 questions. How long does it take to obtain a DUNS number? I think we've covered this one. Usually it's 2 or 3 days. We're not sure what the backlog is right now. And what would be the recommended guidance on coordinating between the county and the NEU to ensure similar expenditures are not covered? So we are going to be working, we have one of our local government liaisons, Ben Thursby, and then we'll be bringing on another local government liaison to help assist with some of these things. But it's not just the city and the county. So it's also the state. So for example, the state is currently running a rental assistance program, and we'll be standing up a mortgage assistance program that will run statewide. So use those resources here at the Office of Recovery. Let them know what you're doing. You know, we also want to be here to be a resource for ideas. You know, if someone in one part of the state has a really great idea, that's definitely something that those folks can share with others as we're looking to fill gaps and holes in services and supports around the state. So I would just encourage you to utilize that, but also be in contact with those around you, right? If you're a city, be in contact with your county and see what they're doing so that, you know, we're not duplicating federal funds. Anything else I missed on that one? Matt or Jocelyn? Perfect. Question from Trey, will governing body action be required to turn the funds over to the state, or could a clerk just decide to do that administratively?
So what I can say about that is we are also awaiting guidance on that declination process, because that's going to be a Treasury form. So if a clerk decided to administratively opt out at this point, all they would be doing is getting into our pipeline to receive that form, and that the communication to receive that form is going to go to any contact that we have in our system for that city, whether that's through this application or through those contacts that we collected before. We don't know how much, what will be in that form and who all will have to sign off on that. So all we can do on our side to control, you know, who gets to opt out, once we get through our non-responsive period and, you know, can publish all final listings, you know, any funds that are turned down that would change those final allocation amounts would be posted publicly so that anybody would be able to see both what funds were returned to the state and what funds were reallocated due to a non-responsive city. So we'll be able to publish those publicly. We'll have to just see what else is required by the feds in declining funds.
Matt, anything to add to that one? No, okay. A few more questions about what money can be spent on. I think we've addressed that. Ruth had a question about a specific project. Ruth, I would encourage you to submit a question to the inquiry form, and we can try and point you to the applicable FAQ and guidance and where you might look to find that answer. Another question about where to get your email added. Again, that would be the inquiry form that's in the upper right-hand side of our website. Is the top line budget the total budget for all funds from the budget certificate included in the state forms submitted to the state in the 2020 budget?
Yes.
Jocelyn?
Yeah, the budgets that were used to calculate the allocation amounts to ensure that the 75% of the budget had not been exceeded, those were from the state forms submitted in the 2020 budget cycle. Those are all posted on the Department of Administration website, publicly available, and that is what was used for that calculation.
Perfect. So some questions about links. I don't know if they've been dropped yet. If somebody could drop the Treasury form in there. Leslie, our website is covid.ks.gov. Is the DUNS number specific for this project, or can we use one already acquired by the city for another project?
Use the one you have. It should be associated with the city's address. So as long as it's active and it's still reflective of the current organization contact information, then you should be good to go.
A question about opting out. Yes, if you're opting out, we still need you to submit the form. You just don't have to submit all the information. You'll get to the opt out and then you can stop and then sign. So Nikki is asking, in other words, are MIP accounts for many of us? Jocelyn, do you know?
Nikki, I'm not sure exactly what that is, but if you want to confirm your account information, you can do so through that inquiry form too. And we can confirm what we have. I'm not familiar with what an MIP account would be.
We have a DUNS number. How do we know if it's active? Matt?
DUNS numbers don't generally expire. You have to request to have them canceled. SAM.gov registrations, you have to renew every couple of years. So just submit your request with the DUNS number you have. And as part of our internal review, we'll be validating and checking, but you should be in good shape with it.
Matt, would you recommend hiring a grant administrator to ensure all the reporting is done properly?
For full disclosure, the last 27 years, I was a state and local government employee doing grant administration. So I don't think this stuff is particularly hard. My caveat is we have not seen the actual reporting guidance from the Treasury Office and Inspector General. I will say I don't think the reporting responsibilities will be as difficult as the uniform guidance compliance responsibilities. So if you don't hire a grant administrator, you definitely should identify a person internally to be the primary point of contact and to get that person some training and professional development. A lot of that will be available through the Recovery Office's website, but also there are resources like the National League of Cities and other advocacy groups that have put out a lot of content and material that should help somebody already on staff with your organizations be able to navigate this process.
Thank you. Linda's asking, so we can have our money put into the regular account that the state sends us for our money and then transfer it to a different account to save time? Yes.
Yep.
Great plan. Is there a way for you to tell us who in our organization received the emails? I mean,
you want to request a contact list for your city and find out exactly who we have so far and what those gaps might be. Certainly send us an inquiry and we will send over who we have so far. What we'll do is when you fill out the application and you say, here's our authorized person, here's our primary point of contact, those will get added to the contacts that we already have. We will not replace them. We will not pull out anybody who's already in there. So if you're getting emails and you're not the right person and you want to be removed, you will also have to make that formal request to be removed.
Jody's asking if we could walk through the 75% budget cap.
Sure. Essentially, the feds gave us the list of the incorporated cities, and they gave us the population per the census and the funds that were received. Actually, the full amount, the full annual, the full total allocation, not just the first 50%, the full allocation amount was just prorated and allocated according to population. And then that allocation amount was compared to 75% of the annual budget per the budgets received by the state for the 2020 budget through January 27th of 2020. And then there were only a couple that had a little bit above. Most everyone was still underneath that cap and will get their full allocation amount.
Gary is asking, why would someone want to opt out? So there are some very small allocations for cities that have very small populations. There are reporting requirements. You know, at this point, I don't know that I want to guess why someone would want to opt out, but they could. Jocelyn, Matt, anything to add?
There's a cost to the oversight and administration of this, and the jurisdiction would have to do a, you know, sort of return on investment, cost benefit analysis. If you're getting $5,000 and internally it's going to cost you more than that to report and do oversight, but that would be about the only reason why.
Diana's asking, Matt, how do we find out if we have a DUNS number?
I just dropped the DUNS number lookup into
Perfect.
the chat, as well as the sam.gov lookup. We will do some of this research ourselves, but especially with the DUNS number lookup, it's very organizational specific. So we could put in city of and not receive a record, but you registered city, comma, you know, whatever, and it would come up. So I would encourage you to search a couple different ways if you're looking for your DUNS number.
And Jeannie is asking, will we be required to provide an independent audit?
So I'll start and then I'll defer to Jocelyn. So you kind of have two requirements. You have your regular annual requirement and your obligations to, you know, your to the state. With the federal funds, there's something called the single audit. That kicks in if you hit the single audit threshold, which is $750,000 in federal funds in a single year. So not just this funding, but federal money that you might be receiving from other sources, including pass through other organizations. But if you're well under that $750,000 threshold, you don't have the single audit requirement, but you do have your other annual audit responsibilities.
I don't have anything to add.
Perfect. So we have a question about the term home rule county for cities that are in multiple counties. That's not a term that most cities are familiar with. Andrea, do you have a?
Yeah, this is Andrea. I would just ask if there are any communities out there that have questions regarding the county that home rule or the county that they should report on the form, to just shoot us an inquiry note and we'll follow up.
And I see another question about non-responsive cities. So I guess what we have heard clear from Treasury is the goal is to get all of this money to local communities and to not have communities that are non-responsive. So as Jocelyn said, we will be doing our best to reach out to to any communities that are non-responsive. As she said, those that we don't have an email address for, we have, used the postal service and mailed to so that they are receiving information and guidance. So, the goal is to not have that, but we will follow the Treasury's lead on how that needs to take place should communities be non-responsive.
Yeah, and let me follow up on that to say, but what is the impact of that? Just so we're clear, the allocation amount that's posted on the website is what you will, half of that is what you will receive in this first payment. The remaining half is what you would receive in 12 months. After the full non-responsive period expires, for those entities who have not been in contact in any way, we will have that allocation amount available to reallocate across the responsive NEUs who have certified and fully applied and up to still that 75% cap. So the funds that we are required to return to the Treasury are those that exceed the 75% cap. And otherwise we can reallocate when it just from that non-responsive pool.
So I have another question about how is the form certifying that the governing body of the city is seeking or not seeking the funds? What if city clerk clicks not accept funds, but the city council did want the funds? So number one, anyone that says they don't want the funds, there's going to be a follow-up. Now, what if the city clerk intentionally clicked not accept and the city council did want the funds? I think that that's an issue for the city to deal with, right? I believe that city clerk would report to that governing body. So, you know, we will do our best to follow up with those folks. But I'm not sure. I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that one. We are getting close to time.
And there was another question about the state of Kansas supplier ID. That would be if you have received invoices from the state or you have set up a bank account with the state, you would have been given a state of Kansas supplier ID. If you don't do a lot of transactions with the state, even if you have one, you're very likely not familiar with it. So that's available. If you know it, put it in. If not, we can look that up with your TIN or your EIN number.
Dee had a question about charging for staff time, which I see Matt answered in the chat. Will the chat also be posted? I don't know the answer to that. Micah, is that part of it? I'm not sure. Oh, yes, I believe so, Micah says. Okay. Other questions? We have 1 or 2 minutes left.
Just following up on the response about admin cost, in addition to your grant agreement, within the Treasury frequently asked questions, there's several FAQs that address it directly and give you specific examples of what types of things would be allowable under administrative cost.
So Ruth is asking about an email from the Department of Commerce to register with them. I'm not familiar with what email you're talking about, Ruth. So maybe if you could forward that to us or connect with us on the inquiry form, that would be useful. And we can follow up offline. Tammy, yes, we are recording the meeting and it will be posted on our website. Anything else? We appreciate everybody attending. Oh, John is asking, when would the master list of consultants be available? Our goal is early July. We appreciate everybody joining. Please reach out if you have questions. We have our local government liaisons. We have the inquiry form. We will do our best to respond as timely as possible. We look forward to distributing these funds to all of you so that you can go and do awesome things in your communities. With these funds, it is truly a historic investment, and we're very excited to partner with you on it and get these dollars out the door for the use of Kansan. So Robert is asking about what the money can be used on. Robert, I would direct you to our website. We have some webinars where we've already talked about that. and lots of resources there. Also in the appendix of this webinar, there'll be some links as well. So once we get that posted, that will be available. Anything else, Jocelyn, Matt?
No, our team here will stay on just for a few more minutes as everyone trickles out in case there are additional questions that come in.
Thank you all.
Thank you.